From fugitive to long-term prisoner to writer to producer, director. It's such a privilege to welcome my good friend Seth Ferranti to our channel. Seth, I'm going to shut up and welcome you. Tell us how you became immersed in the criminal justice system.
Yeah, what's up, Justin, man? Thanks for having me. I got involved in drugs like cannabis and psychedelics at a really early age. I started using them around 13. I saw them as kind of therapeutical, medicinal, and spiritual, kind of mind expanding thing. And by 15, I was supplying them to all my friends. And as my friends went to college, I went to college too. It was kind of like have drugs, will travel. And unfortunately, I was, trying to be this biggest drug dealer I could be at the height of the war on drugs. And, eventually I got caught. The hammer came down. I got busted in 1991. And at the time, I was an outlaw. I never considered myself a criminal. I broke laws that I thought were wrong. So I consider myself an outlaw. And, I ran. I was a fugitive for 2 years. I was top 15 U.S. Marshals list. And when they eventually caught me in 1993, they basically, stepped on me and ground me into the dirt and gave me a 25-year sentence when I was 22 for a
So
first-time nonviolent offense.
So we're going to talk about that. When I got into trouble, all the way up until I pled guilty, was sentenced, and went to prison, I continued to tell myself, I don't feel like a criminal. I didn't have bad intentions, yet there I was eventually standing for count in federal prison. I think so many people feel that same way. How did you learn that you were the target of an investigation? Was someone cooperate against you? Was there a raid? Were they trailing and tracking you for a while? How do you learn, like, my goodness, the feds are watching?
Yeah, there was a series of smaller busts, at some of the colleges, and then they just kept, people just kept flipping and falling like dominoes, and they kept hearing my name, Seth, 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 and this was like early '90s, so that name Seth, it was not very common. I mean, now you got like Seth Rogen, Seth MacFarlane. It seems like Seth is a lot more popular name, but back then, there wasn't that a common a name, and eventually they found me. They found out my last name, and I got indicted federally. But it was basically, close friends, people that I was around all the time, that eventually led the DEA to my doorstep.
When I was in prison, people would frequently say, you white collar guys are worse because you deliberately did something that hurt people, in some cases against their will. Was the rationalization in selling drugs like, this is a market, they want it, I have it, it's their choice? Did that help you cross the line? Or at a young age, did you just say, this is an opportunity for me to make a lot of money, I'm good at this, and I'm good at managing a team? Help us understand the mindset way back when.
Yeah, well, I felt, I mean, when I was 13, and that was in the '80s. This is your brain on drugs, Nancy Reagan, and all that. And I just never believed that marijuana was like heroin, especially after I started using it. I thought it was really different. So, then when you get in the system, and they give you all that time, and they say, oh, you're addicted to drugs and you're this and that. So I spent the first 5 years of my sentence probably battling almost myself, like, is this right or is this wrong? And, I know they say you're supposed to accept responsibility and all that. And, I tried to do that for a long time. But now, as a 52-year-old man, and out in the world again, I'm kind of proud of my younger self, because I kind of stood up and kind of gave like the big FU to the government. And I feel real justified now, because cannabis is legal, and they're looking at psychedelics in all types of different studies, so, I feel like it's done like a complete 360. But at the time, yeah, at first, I mean, when everything is against you, even though you feel like you may be right, it's kind of obvious. My parents and everything, like, telling me I'm wrong. So I struggled with that for a lot of years. But now I think I've come out the other end, and I really do. I feel justified now.
Let's talk a little bit about the big FU, because as I understand it, after you were sentenced, you decided serving a 25-year prison sentence might not be in my best interest at this time. You elected to go down a different path. Can you walk us down that path?
Yeah. So basically, the feds, once I got, in trouble and arrested by the feds, I was given a choice, cooperate, or do like 20 to life. and I didn't like either. I didn't like either option. 20 to
None of
life was
them
not a
were
good
none of
option.
them were appetizing to you. I understand.
Yeah, and I wasn't trying to cooperate. So I wanted to run. I wanted to get out of there. I had a little bit of money. I was only like 20. I was only like 20 years old, so I had a little bit of money, and I made myself disappear. I faked my suicide on the banks of the Potomac River, and I took off. I made it seem like I killed myself, and I took off.
And how does the word get out that you've committed suicide? Was anyone in cahoots with you, or did they just figure we can't find this guy? Maybe he's dead and gone?
No, I staged my suicides on the banks of the Potomac River. So I remember reading in the newspapers that was like I guess you could call it, the only thing you could call it, was a popular spot, because if you jumped off the cliffs, it was like class 5 rapids, so you couldn't swim, and you would get banged against the rocks, and you would either drown, or the rocks would kill you. So a lot of people used to jump off those cliffs. So, I staged it right there. I put my ID, a bottle of vodka, like a jacket, some cigarettes, and I made it seem like I went in the water. But, obviously I didn't go in the water. I took off and went to California. But I made one mistake, in my, naive mind, which I thought I was like a mastermind or something, but obviously I wasn't. I faked my suicide on the wrong side of the dam. So they
Mhm.
dragged the river for 2 weeks, and they said my suicide was a hoax because they always found bodies in the section where I faked my suicide.
So, how long until they eventually find you? And then walk us through the additional consequence of faking your suicide, both in the length of your sentence and also where you were forced to serve your sentence.
Yeah, so 2 years. I was a fugitive for 2 years. I got caught. I fled like October 91. I got caught October 93. And yeah, when they caught, it was crazy. I had no idea I was like top 15. I was like, why was top 15? I never carried a gun or anything.
Top
Basically,
15 on the
I
most, to be clear, top 15 on the most wanted list.
yeah, the U.S.
Like
Marshals most wanted
international
list.
international terrorists, the worst of the worst. You find yourself on the top
Uh,
15.
yeah, as a basically a 22-year-old first time nonviolent offender. So that just shows you like the war on drugs. But in retrospect, I look back, and basically, I put a black mark on the prosecutors in the Eastern District of Virginia, the federal prosecutors, because they felt like a little 20-year-old kid outsmarted them.
Mhm.
So they went after me hard. I got caught. I was black boxed and everything. Like what black box means, everybody in the feds, when you're on the bus, you get like a belly chain, shackles, and your handcuffs. Your handcuffs are handcuffed to your shackles. But I got the extra thing, like the black box, what they use for like escape risks, or like the Jeffrey Dahmer types, or like the worst of the worst. That's so your hands are together, and you like literally have no movement, and it's like attached to your waist, and like you can't even move your hands. So I had that honor, and they extradited me. I got caught in Missouri. They extradited me back to Virginia, and I got an obstruction of justice charge, which was 5 extra years. And then I got another failure to appear charge and fraudulent use of ID, which was another 12 months. So basically, I got an extra 6 years for taking off.
And you delayed the process of getting this over with by 2 years for running. So you're sentenced to a very long time in prison. I'd like to spend just a few minutes on your experience in prison. Let's start off with where you started the long journey and the initial adjustment in prison. Was it, hey, I want to rehabilitate, or was it, hey, I'm going to continue to make some bad choices on the inside?
Yeah. So, I mean, I went in as a 22-year-old kid. Most of the people, it was a war on drugs. There was a lot of people with a lot of sentences, but there was also what I would call like the old guard, like the guys from the 80s, like the real criminals.
Mhm.
Like what the feds are known for, like all the mafia guys, the bank robbers, the criminal masterminds, the gang bangers, the RICO Act guys. And so I went in there, and I'm gonna admit, I was scared. I'd never been in prison. I grew up in the middle class suburbs. I was basically a Navy brat. So it was like culture shock to me. So at first I really felt like I had to prove myself, as a man and as a go hard convict. So I'd say from 93 to 99, my first 6 years, I was kind of following that route. Luckily I never joined any gangs, but I was around a lot of those guys. But I played sports a lot, and I started taking college courses, so I had other interests, so that kind of kept me away from the gangs. But I gravitated to those guys because I wanted to be like the crazy white boy. I wanted to be considered a tough guy, just for protection purposes. It was like a mask I put on. And I started out in the medium highs, and like the medium highs, my first 12 years I did medium highs. They call those the gladiator schools. So where dudes, not like dudes are getting stabbed there, but you got to fight. So I was having to fight a lot. But I wanted to do that because I wanted to prove that I was a man to myself and to everybody else.
Now, we've been friends since I was released from prison, going back to 2009, and we began communicating while you were finishing your sentence at the Low at Forest City. You were aggressively going through the Straight A Guide program Michael created. By that time, you'd authored dozens of books and had really built the Gorilla Convict brand. Let's work our way back to something we both have in common, which is serving time with my business partner and mentor and friend, and your friend as well, Michael Santos. I'd love to know where you met Michael, a little bit about what you saw about Michael's routine in prison, and did he have an influence on you in helping you understand choices you make now will certainly relate to the life you'd like to live after prison?
Yeah. So when I first met Mike, everybody was talked about Mike. I mean, he was like a magnet. People, like, I heard about him before. Everybody, when I first met him, everybody was saying he was a millionaire. And he was a guy like in the TV room watching like the bottom line for like the stocks. Like he would be there like as soon as you could, like 5 a.m. in the morning. And I remember I was like a midnight orderly, so I would always see this guy like run down and jump on this TV at 5 a.m. to watch the stocks and write everything down. And then he'd run to the phone and make phone calls. And I was like, what is this dude doing? And everybody was like, oh, he's a millionaire. He's a millionaire. And I was like, how is he a millionaire? And he was like, in stocks, he made like millions of dollars. And so this is the reputation he had. So, eventually I met him and I started talking. And back then, I take a lot of college classes. So I had started, writing, but I was mostly getting published by like the FamGram or, November Coalition, like these prison newsletters. And I wrote a couple pieces about my case that they had published. So when I met Mike, that was kind of, I was trying to impress him since he was this, quote unquote, millionaire that everybody, was talking about. And so I was like, yeah, I'm a writer. And he was like, oh yeah, cool. He's like, I'm a writer too. He's like, well, what have you written? So, I broke out the little FamGram and the November Coalition, and it was like maybe 3 or 4 things, but it was like all the same piece, and he was like, well, this is like the only thing you've written. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm a published writer. And he's like, well, what else have you written? And I'm like, well, this is it. And he's like, well, I'm working on a book right now, so we kind of went through this, and he's like, he showed me like all this stuff that he had written that had never even been published. He's like, look, man, if you want to be a writer, you got to write. Mm-hmm. Writers write. And, so he kind of had an effect on me then. And then he also, he was known, he had like a vicious workout routine. Right. And I was like a big workout guy. I played sports. And so as I got to know him, I was like, man, can I work out with you? Because he didn't do weights. He was like all running, calisthenics, stuff like that. And, I'd been doing the weights, and I got hurt my back a couple of times. So I wanted to try something different. So I started doing this calisthenic, running routine, burning a lot of calories, high intensity stuff with him. And for 2 years, I just used to work out with him, walk the track, and he would just talk to me about, what he thought, my philosophy should be. Cause he was like, look, man, you're a smart kid. You're a good guy. Why are you trying to be like this prison tough guy? He's like, this isn't you. How's this going to help you in your future? And he just kept pounding this stuff into my head. And, I listened, I was cool. We were workout partners, and then he put out this one book, and I saw like little different success and stuff he was doing out in the world. And he's like, man, you have the ability to do this too. And I always tell Mike, I felt like, because it's like 99, 2000, before he even developed like this whole program, all the stuff that he's doing that's going into the prisons now. And I always tell him, I felt like I was like one of the guinea pigs, as he was formulating all this stuff in his mind, he was like trying it out on me. And it worked really. I can say honestly, like meeting Michael changed, the trajectory of the course of my life, because at that time I was in the mediums. and I had just transferred to the low, and I met him and I was hanging out, and then I got in trouble again. I got transferred right back to the mediums. But I argued with him a lot because I'm a hard-headed dude. I was stubborn, but really it was when I got transferred back to the mediums when everything he said started, taking a hold, and it was like he was watering me. He was watering me. He was planting the seeds. He was watering me, and I was fighting it the whole time. But then when I was separated from him, then everything that he planted started to grow in me, and it really, I was taking college courses, but then I got serious about my college courses. I got serious about my writing. I started writing for publication. I started publishing books. So really, meeting him kind of changed the direction of where I was going and what I was doing in life and in prison.
So Michael had this same impact on me, as you know, and I frequently tell people in our community, and I'm going to put up a link, everyone watching, to our free community in school. And I tell everyone every day, you might not serve time alongside Michael like Seth and I did, but you have the same opportunity to learn from him with his daily journals and books and videos, implement the same strategies that guided Seth and me on the inside. Seth and I chose to listen, do the work, and implement it. And I think it's part of the reason we've had such success. Let's begin to work our way towards the end. Before I do, you obtained both an undergraduate and master's degree on the inside, correct?
Yeah. I got my associates, and I got my associates from Penn State. I got my bachelor's from University of Iowa, and I got my master's from California State University, all through correspondence. Although the first 24 credits I took when they still had Pell Grants through Eastern Kentucky University, right when I first got in, like 93 to 95.
And how many books did you publish in federal prison?
I think eight books. Well, 8 books while I was in, but I wrote more that I published when I got out. So now I got like 25, but the majority of them, I mean, I wrote in prison. I think maybe out here I might have wrote really one book. A lot of the other books, it's stuff I wrote in prison, that I later, made into books, just different little stuff, some books. I still got manuscripts. I think I probably still got 4 manuscripts that I wrote in prison, rough drafts that I still haven't had time, to turn into books, but I will eventually. So, that's what I did. So I wrote pretty much almost all those books in prison, but, I had to edit them, polish them, and I've had more time to do that, the last couple of years since I've been out.
So let's talk about your release. You were released when, and how long did you serve in total?
I was released January 2015. So I did like 21 years, a little over 21 years, from October 1993 to January 2015.
And the transition for anyone can be difficult, especially someone who served more than 2 decades in prison. Yet you seem to have, we all have our ups and downs coming home from prison. Despite the lengthy sentence, you had aspirations on the inside to publish and direct. When did this become reality on the outside, where you're actually working on projects that are in front of tens and millions of people? Help us understand that process after your release.
All right. Well, when I first got out, I did like some local film stuff. I did like some little Easter Bunny assassin stuff that's on YouTube, and just like little shorts. And I did some acting. I got involved in the local film scene and indie film scene in St. Louis. But really, the first big thing I did, I met Sean Reck from Transition Studios, and he had done like 200 Crime Stopper shows for all the networks, and he had won like 9 regional Emmys. He's based out of Cleveland, Ohio, and he already had this film called A Murder in the Park that was on Showtime. And I was working as a journalist when I first got out, doing mostly stuff for like Vice, true crime stuff. For
You
Vice,
used to
Penthouse.
you used to interview me for Vice. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've done. I've literally had thousands of articles published, and I was doing that in prison. So I met him and I interviewed him for A Murder in the Park, for Vice. And actually, it happened like for whatever reason they killed the piece. Vice didn't even run it, but I made the connection with him, and he was just coming off the success of that documentary, and he was looking for his next thing. And I had written all these pieces for like Vice News and Vice and The Fix about Richard Wershey Jr.'s case, White Boy Rick. And at that time, they had just signed the deal to do the White Boy Rick movie with Matthew McConaughey. So Sean knew this because, he read all the trade papers, he was in the industry. And so, I was kind of pitching ideas to him. And so when I told him about that, he was like, wait, I heard about that story. They're doing this big $40 million movie. He's like, I like that idea. He's like, what, show me. So I showed him all my work. We developed the outline, and he mentored me. He kind of took me, I'd say besides Michael Santos and my adoptive father, Sean Reck is probably like the third big influence in mentorship of my life, and he took me in, he showed me, I knew how to write. I knew how to make stories. I knew how to tell stories. I didn't know how to make a documentary. I didn't know nothing about the business. I didn't know nothing about the technical stuff, the shooting, the setups, all that. So he flew me into all the shoots, and he basically like kept me under his arm. And that was like about a 18-month process, filming that and editing that. And still to this day, like I call him, like I took everything I learned from him, and I went and formed my own studio, Outlaw Films. But still to this day, like I call him, like if I need advice, like how do you do this, or what should I do? I call him and I ask him, and he's always open and receptive to me, even as he's grown, bigger. And he, when I met him, he had like a little studio like I got now with like maybe 3, 4, 5 employees. Now he has like a big 40-person studio, and still he's still receptive to my calls, and still teaches me, and answers all my questions.
Well, let's transition to your current project, because just to be out of prison just 8 years and to have a film that I encourage everyone to buy or rent on Amazon, I just did. To reach that level just 8 years out of prison, it's truly remarkable. So if you're okay with it, I'd love actually to show a trailer to the film, and then you can walk us through the process. So let's do this.
The Treasury Department intends to pursue a relentless warfare against the despicable, dope-peddling vulture who preys on the weakness of his fellow man.
Forget everything you know about America's war on drugs. Where it started, when it started, and most importantly, who was involved. This is a war we are still fighting today, a war that began at the beginning of the 20th century. The illicit international drug trade was created and structured by some of the most notorious gangsters in American history. This is the untold history of America's original drug lords.
I'd love to hear. It looks terrific. Can you tell us about this project, how long it took from start to production, and how you had the idea for this?
Yeah, so man, I've been working on this for a while. I'd say this goes back to probably like 2018. So after I did White Boy with Sean Reck, I was looking for different projects. So I started this other one, Nightlife, that's about to come out. But as a kind of like a fledgling filmmaker, a first timer, it was hard to get money. No one wanted to give me money. No one wanted to take a chance on me, even though I had that credit on White Boy. I was just a part of the team. So I would get a little bit money here and there, and these things are expensive to make. You could literally, like on a 75-minute documentary, you could spend a couple $100,000 if you want to do it right. So I started this, and actually, one of my friends, another true crime writer that used to write me in prison, named Christian Cipollini, he had the idea for it, and he knew I'd just done White Boy, and I was working on this other one, Nightlife, and he came to me, and he said, "Hey, man, I got this idea." And I was like, yeah, let's do this, kind of the untold story of the mafia and heroin, America's first drug cartel, Dopemen. I loved it because I knew the mafia history, like Lucky Luciano, Al Capone, some of the other mobsters like Jack Legs Diamond, Arnold Rothstein, but you just hear the mythology. This dude like knew the nuts and bolts, and he was basically like, look, all these dudes were like drug dealers, but pop culture doesn't see them as drug dealers. So, with White Boy Rick, we kind of exposed, the government and the corruptness in the Detroit, law enforcement that went all the way up to the mayor's office, how they railroaded White Boy Rick. So, that's kind of my thing. And it's also been kind of my thing, in writing, because I always preach like, criminal justice reform, exposing, the wrongs of the drug war, telling the victims of the drug war story. So to me, it tied into the same thing, because people watch The Godfather and stuff like that, and they make like the mob seem like they're all these honorable, dudes. And I was locked up with these dudes, and there's like a couple dudes here and there that were like the real kind of, Godfather prototype, but it was like one or two guys, the rest of them, a lot of them, they were like cutthroat dudes, they would basically slice your throat for like $5, if it called for it. So, I didn't really have a high opinion of these dudes, and the way in pop culture, like this mystique about the mafia, I was like, their whole empire, everything about the mafia, it's based off dope, but they deny it. So I kind of wanted to show that. I wanted to show the history, how the Italian mafia and the other mafia groups, the Jewish and Irish included, they formed the first drug cartel before prohibition even ended. So when Christian brought me this idea, I was like, man, let's do this. We didn't have any money, but I had a couple cameramen and stuff, and I bought some cameras. So we just started shooting, and I started investing my own money, and I got a little money here and there. But it took a long time, to finish. And plus also I've been working on a bunch of projects, so that's probably why I'm kind of I have a hard time. I lose attention, fast, so I got to do like a million different things. So, I just didn't work on this, like now I actually got like 8 projects in motion, this included. But yeah, finally, man, we got it done. It was a long struggle. I went through a couple different editors as I kind of learned all this. And yeah, but I'm really happy with the finished product. I think it's a really good film, and this is just volume 1. I'm going more. I'm going to do like a 2 and a 3, and maybe even more if the demand is out there.
Walk us through the satisfaction. I know Michael's path was documenting the journey, memorializing it, overcoming adversity, preparing for success, inspiring tens of thousands of people through his work, and now programs he's created, like preparing for success after prison, is in federal prisons. Prisoners are getting credit through the First Step Act for it. He's writing Earning Freedom alongside me in 2008, talking about incentivizing excellence for prisoners. And a decade later, the First Step Act passes, right? It's very fulfilling for him. It's his life's mission. Help us understand, you had your path. I know you're interested in prison reform, but you pursued your path of writing and producing. So similar to Michael's accomplishments coming true, how does it feel to see your life's work on Amazon and for others to review and watch and enjoy, to knowing that the decades of work, it was worth it?
Yeah, to me, I don't know. I see it like I'm climbing this ladder. It's like you climb this ladder in life, and like, sometimes you got to take 2 steps back to take 1 step forward. So, I like to produce stuff. I mean, basically, I make stuff that I would want to watch. It doesn't make me happy that other people like it too. Yes, but am I where I want to be? No. I've always had visions of being, like the next Guy Ritchie or the next Quentin Tarantino. I want to write and direct. I want to have like 20 million, 30 million, $40 million budgets. I mean, I would even, the height of my career in my mind would be like directing like a $100 million Marvel franchise film, because I love comic books. But, I started writing about this true crime stuff, all the African-American drug lords from the crack era in prison, and prison gangs and prison life, prison basketball. And now, I started doing all these big true crime features. Now I'm doing these true crime docs, and I've got into more where I like to expose stuff. But yeah, I feel like I'm only halfway up the ladder, man. I feel like I got a lot further to go. But I mean, I'm proud, but at the same time, I got a long way to go to where I want to be. I set the standards really high, and I think I got that from Michael. Because Michael was always shooting for the stars. I mean, he works hard and everything, but he's a dreamer too. And I've always been a dreamer, so I think that's where me and him, really connected, because we want to do. When we were in prison, everything that me and him were doing, and even probably yourself too, like the guards and the other prisoners, like, oh, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that. No, well, we did it. And another big thing that Michael always told me that I stick to this day is, when you do get out, don't let real life get in your way, because there's so many talented people in prison that have all types of different creative ideas and want to do all types of stuff, but they get out, they have families, they get in debt, they get in trouble again. All types of stuff keep people from doing what they really want to do. And I promised myself when I got out, I said, I'm not going to let anything, get in my way. Basically, my work is my life. Yeah, I have relationships, I have friends, and I have stuff, but my work is number one. I always put my work first. I don't put nothing over my work because kind of to me, my work, that's my legacy. I mean, will people know my work for 100 years from now? I mean, who knows? You never know, stuff like that. But do I hope people know my work 100 years from now? Yeah. I mean, that would be like the ultimate dream for me, like after I'm dead and people are still talking about my work.
Last question. Many people on the White Collar Advice channel embroiled in a white collar crime. Of course, people enduring all sorts of crimes come here. We have a community, people going in for a year and a day, 5 years, 10 years, and it's easy to feel as if your life is over while traversing a government investigation. So many people in our community have never been to prison, never thought about prison, never knew anyone that went to prison, and it's easy to feel as if life is over. You thrived through 2 decades, and now you're thriving upon your release. Can you close with some insights to someone who's entering the system or who might be entering federal prison for the first time? Offer some advice to them as we wrap up.
Yeah, I just think prison is a real negative environment. I mean, basically what people do is like they step on other people and prop themselves up to make them feel better or make them appear better. So I always tell people I'm a glass is half full type of dude. I'm very optimistic, so don't let anybody tell you what you can or can't do. Of course, yeah, you got to follow the rules, you got to follow the regulations. But if you have dreams or you have aspirations, maybe you can't do it in prison. You got to wait till you get out, but you don't have to wait to start till you get out. You can start laying the foundation while you're in there. That's what Michael taught me, and that's what I did. I could write books in prison, so I wrote books, even though they locked me up sometimes for writing books, running a business, or they didn't like my content or what I wrote or the articles that got published. But I'm just saying, man, keep fighting, keep believing, and kind of put your head down and don't get caught up in the mix. Don't get caught up in the drama. Because just like in life, there's in prison, there's a lot of drama and there's a lot of strife, and you can get caught up very easily. So if you let yourself get caught up, you're not going to be able to follow your dreams.
Thank you. It's interesting you mentioned going to the hole for writing books, because Michael was in Lompoc in 2007. I believe he's writing inside. They send him to the hole. Carol helps him get transferred to Taft, where I eventually met him, and the rest is history. So it's interesting you hear that. Seth, congratulations on your success. Your film, I encourage everyone to go to Amazon and purchase or rent Dopemen, as I did. I'm happy to be your friend. Thank you for contributing to our channel today, and congratulations on your success. I know how hard you have worked.
All right, thank you. And I'll leave this by saying, really now this is just the beginning, man. I got a whole bunch of stuff coming out. I got a whole bunch of other plans, So like I said, that's what I do. I just keep my head down and I work, and I don't let anybody deny me anything. I go after for what I want.
Thank you very much, Seth. Appreciate thank you for the interview.
All right.